Inferno, Radiance, and Umbral spells are all over Lords of the Fallen. If you want to be the best magic user like no one ever was, you'll need to know the best spells in the game, their vendors, and where you can find them. Let's go! Let me know your favorite spells in the comments down below. But before we get into that, this video is brought to you by Dungeon Hunter 6. The Dungeon Hunter series returns for their first game since 2015, and let me tell you, it was worth the wait. Dungeon Hunter 6 is a free-to-play mobile action RPG with a unique hero collector feature in a stunning fantasy style. The game has a fantastic hack-and-slash combat system with various builds and skills to utilize as you fight massive bosses. Y'all know I love builds and skills, and with a variety of skill tree options to test builds, there's plenty of fun to be had here. It's absolutely free to play. Download it now using the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen if you're viewing on a PC. For every boss you want to defeat, the game has a unique mechanic by which you can not only loot and ride and fly them, but also summon up to 3 of them on the battlefield to become members of your squad, to follow you anywhere and perform combo skills. You can even shapeshift into them in the late game, and there are over 100 uniquely designed bosses to conquer and explore. This is a really cool mechanic that I haven't seen done before, and with new classes and units updated monthly, the fun of utilizing them in battle is endless. There is more in Dungeon Hunter 6 with creative missions like turning into a cat on a stealth mission, and it takes its 3D graphics performance to the next level with stunning skill animations optimized for multicasting, ensuring the best visual experience and smoothest combat on mobile devices. The game also has social features like guilds and real-time guild wars and an auction house to trade items. Download the game for free on both Android and iOS using my link in the description to get a special starter pack worth over $50, or you can scan the QR code on your screen if you're viewing it on PC. You can also use your game account to enter the launch Lucky Spin event for free great prizes like an iPhone 15, PS5, Apple Watch, and more. So check out those details in the description down below. Thank you Dungeon Hunter 6 for sponsoring this video. Let's start out with the Inferno spells. Now, Inferno spells really come from 2 different vendors, but one of them is really the main one that you'll only ever really see, and that is the Tortured Prisoner. Now, they are found underneath Skyrest, and to free the prisoner, you'll need to grab the Skyrest bridge key, which is found sort of underneath Skyrest, past the Exacta to Dunmar like NPC. If you travel past there in the Umbral realm, you'll be able to pass through a couple of gates, and there is a bridge here that will actually contain the key. Now, if you're on the bridge, just be careful because enemies will spawn, but essentially once you've grabbed that key, you can then head over to the actual door and open up to like the catacombs, like prison-y area of Skyrest, and she'll be in a cell here. And once you're inside and you've found her and talked to her, essentially you'll need to be in the Umbral realm again to find a specific Inferno catalyst that you need to give to her. So in the Umbral realm, back in the original room where you like entered this area, there is a door that is locked by 3 of the like soulflay creature things you need to like destroy. Now they're pretty easy to find. One of them is underneath the bridge, one is like right near the door, and the other one sort of like towards the stairs. Once you have knocked out all of these, you'll be able to enter that area, grab the catalyst, and give her the catalyst. You'll then need to rest, and she'll move to the entrance to Pieta's boss arena, and here you'll actually be able to buy an Inferno catalyst plus like the sort of original like basic like Inferno spells from her. After you have defeated the Spurned Prodigy boss, you'll be able to give her an item that'll expand her inventory, and she'll actually move then to that boss's arena and have more spells for you to buy. And the main one that you want to buy from her at this point, after you've done all of this, is Seismic Slam. This is like probably the best of the Inferno spells, or like definitely right up there. So essentially what this does is it summons an infernal hammer to strike on the ground, and it sends forth like a massive line of explosions directly in front of you. It's really good for those explosions. Like they're actually clutch as, and it does heaps of damage and AoE damage. And like, even though there are a lot of enemies that are resistant to fire, being able to knock them back with this spell is really beneficial, especially when you're surrounded by a bunch of those little like Umbral guys in the Umbral realm, you know what I mean? But that's a really great spell that highly would recommend grabbing. Magma Surge is another fantastic spell that will summon an explosive surge of magma on the ground. Now, when this like charge goes off, it will significantly damage enemies that are hit by it, but it will also leave like a lingering fire effect on the ground that can actually ignite enemies and set them ablaze, which is really beneficial if you say want to like control an area, say like a doorway or like an area where enemies have to walk. They're just going to walk over it and get ignited and take that damage. damage. It's also worth pointing out here that you don't actually take damage from these pits. Typically you do from fire, but not from your own fire, so it's actually good for that as well. Next is Adir's Rage. Now this is a shout sorcery that will give you an increase to your physical damage. Now this is one that comes from that other vendor called Damarose, and you will first encounter her at the entrance to the Hound boss, and then she will move way later in the game, and depending on your story choices, you might actually be locked out of talking to her. I don't have any footage of me actually talking to her because I didn't realize this, but she should be found like right here as soon as you get to like that Hound boss, and I highly recommend to buy everything from her inventory, as there is a high chance that you'll never be able to do this again. So if you do run into her, please do talk to her and buy the stuff. But it's a great spell, right? It increases your physical damage. Physical damage is probably the main way that you're going to damage enemies, unless you're doing like a full magic build, because physical damage is typically like the king in these sort of ways. And I think it's about a 10% damage increase just based on my testing. It might be like a little bit less, maybe like 8%, but it's still a really solid amount of damage that you will get from that. Otherwise, in the Infernal line, like the Infernal Orb, the basic spell is obviously good. The Lava Burst is like the upgraded version of this. This comes from Lower Calreth, and you need to enter the Umbral Realm to find this in a chest. And it's like not bad either. I really like Lava Burst because it's actually AoE, whereas like the default like Inferno Orb isn't, and having the AoE of Lava Burst is really good, especially in the Umbral Realm. Like I keep bringing this up, but AoE spells are so clutch because it's very rare that you can do AoE damage from range, and actually being able to do this is really important. But Umbral spells are amazing. Now these require both Radiance and Inferno, and they're some of the funnest in the game. Most of these spells, other than the ones that you'll find in the world, will come from Molhu at the like Skyrest area, and you know, for the most part here you'll be able to talk to them by a catalyst and by the spells, and some of them will also come from the remembrances, but they are really the only vendor that you need for any sort of Umbral setup. The best Umbral spell without a doubt is Latomir's Javelin. Now this will hurl an exploding javelin at enemies. It has a great range, it's also AoE, and its damage numbers are just absolutely insane. Like I don't really understand why this does so much damage. It's probably going to get nerfed if they do chose to do that, but it's really good to use. Now this comes from the Hushed Saint Remembrance. You'll need to beat that boss and then go to Molhu and hand that in to get this spell. Next is the Umbral Guardian, which will summon an Umbral Guardian next to you that will follow you around and deal Umbral damage to enemies. Now this can also be purchased from Molhu at Skyrest Bridge, but you'll need to give them the Bowl of Revelations in order to access this, but you'll get that as part of like the story progression. Now this is a great spell because it's very rare that in this game that there is a way to have someone else other than like, you know, a co-op partner or something come with you to actually just deal damage. Now enemies won't attack this, but they will deal with the damage to them, which you can then knock off that health. And for any sort of, let's say a Grim Reaper build like I did, or any build that uses Umbral spells, this is a really beneficial spell to have, to just chunk off some of that withered damage to then deal damage to them via this method. Now both of these next two both come from Molhu, and that's the Umbral Weapon and Poison Weapon. So one adds Umbral damage or magic, and one adds poison build up to your weapon. Both of these are fantastic. You know, anytime you can add status effects to enemies are great. These are really beneficial for certain boss fights. Let's say, you know, if they have resistances or like they are vulnerable to these damage types, then well worth using for them. But both of these are fantastic. The best Radiance spells. Now, most Radiance spells come from Exacta Dunmere in the Skyrest area, or you can actually just find them out in the world. There's a fair few of these that you'll find early in the game, whereas Inferno spells, by the way, you'll find a lot of them much later in the game, and Umbral spells typically come from Molhu, as we already talked about. But Sanctify will heal yourself for while you're standing within that radius. It is a great spell. I am quite a fan of Sanctify. It's fantastic for certain boss fights that, let's say, there's actually heaps of these boss fights that just like run around like maniacs, and you can actually just stand in this and get the healing while they're just, you know, off gallivanting around doing their nonsense, and then you're all sort of good to go. Area of Tenacity will surround yourself with a radiant aura that decreases damage received, and when you combine this with the healing spells as well, you sort of, you know, become invincible, right? But you definitely will take less damage. Now this actually comes from Skyrest as well. Like in the back area you'll be able to find this just on the ground. Radiant Weapon functions exactly the same as Umbral Weapon or Poison Weapon that we already talked about. It is again a great option, and when you trigger that effect, it does smite enemies, so you get that sort of like lightning, like zigzag that happens. It's a really good option. This comes from Exacta Dunmar, as basically all of these do, but this one doesn't. Blessed Reflections summons radiant duplicates of Pieta to attack enemies. Now you will have to have beaten Pieta, and you get this from her remembrance. This is like so powerful, and again it's very similar to Latomir's Javelin, as all of these remembrance spells are very strong because they're like boss spells, but this one will chunk off tons of health, and the like spirits that it's summoned can either attack in melee or range depending depending on like the distance you are from the target and like sort of where you summon them. But I've used this spell heaps in my Radiance build because it's just so strong. Let me know your favorite spell in the comments down below. Thank you Dungeon Hunter 6 for sponsoring this video. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza and I hope you have a great day.